Lord Chesterfield's letters to his son, dated March 27, 1747. Dear boy, pleasure is the rock which most people spit upon. They launch out with crowded sails in quest of it, but without a compass to direct their course, or reason sufficient to steer the vessel, for want of which pain and shame instead of pleasure are the returns of their voyage. Do not think that I mean to snarl at pleasure like a stoic, or to preach against it like a parson. No, I mean to point it out and recommend it to you like an Epicurean. I wish you a great deal, and my only view is to hinder you from mistaking it. The character which most young men first aim at is that of a man of pleasure, but they generally take it upon trust, and instead of consulting their own taste and inclinations, they blindly adopt whatever those with whom they are chiefly converse are pleased to call by the name of pleasure, and the man of pleasure, in the vulgar acception of that phrase, means only a beastly drunkard, an abandoned and a profligate swearer and curser. As it may be of use to you, I am not unwilling, though at the same time ashamed, to own that the vices of my youth proceeded much more from my silly resolution of being what I heard called a man of pleasure, than from my own inclinations. I always naturally hated drinking, and yet I have often drunk with disgust at the time, attended by great sickness the next day, only because I then considered drinking as a necessary qualification for the fine gentleman and the man of pleasure. The same is gaming. I did not want money, and consequently had no occasion to play for it. But I thought play another necessary ingredient to the composition of the man of pleasure, and accordingly I plunged into it without desire at first, sacrificed 1,000 real pleasures to it, and made myself solidly uneasy by it for 30 the best years of my life. I was even absurd enough for a little while to swear by way of adorning and completing the shining character which I had affected, but this folly I soon laid aside upon finding both the guilt and the indecency of it. Thus seduced by fashion and blindly adopting nominal pleasures, I lost real ones, and my fortune impaired, and my constitution shattered. I must convince the just punishment of my errors. Take warning then by them. Chase your pleasures for yourself, and do not let them be imposed upon you. Follow nature and not fashion. Weigh the present enjoyment of your pleasures against the necessary consequences of them, and then let your own common sense determine your choice. Were I to begin the world again with the experience which I now have of it, I would lead a life of real, not of imaginary pleasure. I would enjoy the pleasures of the table and of wine, but stop short of the pains inseparably annexed to an excess in either. I would not at 20 years be a preaching missionary of abstemiousness and sobriety, and I should let other people do as they would, without formally and sententiously rebuking them for it. But I would by most firmly resolve not to destroy any own faculties and constitution in commonplace to those who have not regard to their own. I would play to give me pleasure, but not to give me pain. That is, I would play for trifles and mixed companies, to amuse myself and conform to custom, but I would take care not to venture for sums which, if I won, I should not be the better for, but if I lost, should be under a difficulty to pay, and when paid, would oblige me to retrench in several other articles, not to mention the quarrels which deep play commonly occasions. I would pass some of my time in reading and the rest in the company of people of sense and learning, and chiefly those above me. And I would frequent the mixed companies of men and women of fashion, which, though often frivolous, yet they unbend and refresh the mind, not uselessly, because they certainly polish and soften the manners. These would be my pleasures and amusements if I were to live the last 30 years over again. They are rational ones, and moreover, I would tell you, they are really the fashionable ones, for the others are not in truth the pleasures of what I call people of fashion, but those who only call themselves so. Does good company care to have a man reeling drunk among them, or to see another tearing his hair and blaspheming for having lost at play more than he is able to pay, or with life with half a nose and crippled by coarse and infamous debauchery? No, these practices, and much more those who brag of them, make no part of good company, and are most unwillingly, if ever, admitted into it. A real man of fashion and pleasure observes decency at best, neither borrows nor affects vices, and if he unfortunately has any, he gratifies them with choice, delicacy, and secrecy. I have not mentioned the measure. Excuse me. I have not mentioned the measures of the mind, which are the solid and permanent ones, because they do not come under the head of what people commonly call pleasures, which they seem to confine to the senses. The pleasures of virtue, of charity, and of learning is true and lasting pleasure, which I hope you will be long acquainted with. Adieu.